That's a pretty intense gospel reading, wouldn't you say? On one hand, Peter is making a monumental confession. Jesus, you are the Messiah. You are the anointed one from God. You are the one we've been waiting for. You are the Christ. You know, Messiah is the Hebrew for the anointed one of God. Christ is the Greek of the very same word. Jesus Christ. Christ is not Jesus' last name. Jesus the Christ, the anointed one. The long-awaited representation, expression, the exact fullness and expression of the invisible God. That's the Christ, who came, by the way, as a promise to rule the world in love. That's who Messiah is. Interesting that Jesus first asked the question, who do people say that I am? And they say, well, some say John the Baptist, the one coming to prepare the way for Messiah. Some people say Elijah, considered the pinnacle of the prophets, who is foretold to come before Messiah would return. And some say Jeremiah, who took the Ark of the Covenant and the altar and hid them at Mount Nebo. And people believe that before Messiah could come, the Ark of the Covenant would have to come back from its hiding place. Some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, some say Jeremiah. And then Jesus asks this question to Peter, and it's the question that Jesus asks to each of us today. And it doesn't matter what the person beside you thinks as far as God is concerned. God only cares what you think. And so the homily today is titled, Who do you say that I am? So who do you this morning say that Jesus, the Christ, by the Holy Spirit, God is asking you that question today? Who do you say that I am? Or, in our vernacular, who am I to you? Who is Christ to you this morning? I was reading a book by a Jesuit, Paul Coutinho, and I'll just read you the first couple of opening paragraphs. So here's a Catholic priest, and he's skimming through the channels. One Sunday while watching television, I happened upon a gospel channel and heard a preacher tell his listeners that he had an important question for them. Now, I usually don't agree with all those television preachers say, but I find them animated speakers. And I was curious to hear his question. The question was 3 words. Are you ready? What if today, driving home, you get T-boned at an intersection and race to the hospital, and you're laying on your bed, and the doctor says, you've got about 12 hours, call your family. Are you ready? I've done well over 300 funerals and sat with people as they actually take their last breath. And we all talk a lot of smack out here on the outside. But it's a very interesting thing to see when people are hours away from their last breath. How their perspective changes about what really matters. Are you ready when the Lord comes? Because when the Lord comes, he will not ask you whether you were in church today. When the Christ comes, he will not ask you whether you are a good Christian. He will not ask you about the great and admirable things you did in life. When Messiah comes, he will ask this simple question: did you know me? And instead of changing the channel, I had to stop and reflect a moment, because I thought, this is something I might have said or would have liked to have said. Are you ready? Do you know me? Do you know God? Have you seen the face of the divine? These are scary questions, because for many of us, religion is going to church. Many of us will want to answer, I am ready because I attend church every Sunday and I keep the commandments, well, except for a few. But that is not the question that Messiah will ask. He will ask, did you know me? Have you seen the face of God? Is God just a theory or an actual experience of reality for you? Meister Eckhart, the great medieval mystic, believed that everyone needs religion as a well to take them to the river of God's love and divine life. This is a wonderful analogy. Wells are fed by deep underground rivers of life-giving water. But how often in our lives the well and not the water that it provides becomes the focus and goal of our lives? Do you see the picture? We start to admire and promote the well. And the purpose of the well is what? To be the place where you can drink of living water. Since we are seeking an experience of God, let us ask ourselves, is it the well, the outside facility, Peace Lutheran Church, the pews, the cross, the pulpit, the stage, the liturgy? Is that what we are seeking to make us feel safe? Or is the living water what we're actually thirsty for? Because we fortify our well, we decorate it, and we adorn it with elaborate and beautiful liturgies. We say, oh my, look at our well, look at what we've done and how wonderful it is. And yet, we are never drinking from the river. The purpose of the well is to take us to the river. The river gives us freedom. It saves us from ourselves and our fears. Yes, everyone needs religion. Yes, religion is a means to freedom, but religion is not an end in itself. Religion helps us find the river of life and the river of freedom, and it's in this river that we experience the love of God and the divine life that we were created for. So who am I for you today, says Jesus? A well, nicely adorned? Or that mystical porthole into the divine love that your heart aches for and which nothing else can satisfy? Who do you say that I am? This is not a class on theory. This is not a class for debate. This is not a place where we come to discuss ideas and banter them and argue over them back. It's a place where spiritually you've been called here today, whether you realize it or not, by the divine, who is asking you specifically, you particularly, you intimately, who am I for you? Because winning an argument or what someone else thinks will not make a difference at the end of all of this. If you take your insert in your bulletin, you'll see question, are you ready? We just read Coutinho. And the quote, religious tradition is like a well. A well drills deep beneath the surface until it finds the river of life. The Messiah is not the well. He is the river. So number one, who am I to you? Jesus asks. Here's the interesting thing. This is the background and the setting in which Jesus asked that question. It was in Caesarea Philippi. Now, we read over that, Caesarea Philippi in the scripture, and it means basically nothing, somewhere over there. So, if you remember from the homily last week, Jesus was in the region of the Canaanites, Tyre and Sidon. Remember? And he finds this Canaanite woman whose daughter is demon-possessed, screaming out, Messiah, help me, son of David, help me. And at first, Jesus doesn't answer. And then what does Jesus say to this Canaanite woman? He says, don't you know it's not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs? Well, who's he implying is a dog? This Canaanite woman who for millennia were sworn enemies of Israel, the Canaanites. And we talked about last week, why would he say such a derogatory thing? He was setting up and giving to the disciples a mirror in which to see themselves and their cultural idiosyncrasies, because that's what the disciples thought of the Canaanites. Look at this statement and see yourself, Jesus is saying. And the woman cries out, and what does Jesus do? She says, yeah, but even us, she takes the road of humility. She takes the road. Even the dogs are allowed to eat the crumbs under the master's table. She accepted. She accepted her place. In the eyes of the Hebrew people. And Jesus says, woman, great is your faith. You do not let cultural boundaries and idiosyncrasies and categories blind and keep you from the unconditional, unbreakable love of God. Oh, woman, great is your faith. Do you disciples see that my love has no cultural, racial boundaries whatsoever? Great is your faith. And her daughter was healed. So now Jesus moves from that region outside of his people's area to this other place, Caesarea Philippi. Do you know why it's called Caesarea Philippi? Do you know where the word Caesarea comes from? Caesar. It was there that Herod built the glorious white marble temple up on a hill that you could see for miles in honor of Caesar. And by the way, I don't know if you know this or not, but do you know what they called Caesar? The God-man, the Son of God, the incarnation of God. And they built him a big white temple. Not only was Caesarea Philippi named after Caesar and then Philip. Do you know who Philip was? Philip, the son of Herod the Great, whose wife was Cleopatra. A man of great renown, the city named after him, Caesarea Philippi. And there in this was considered a very spiritual hub of enlightenment in that day and age. The Syrians were there, the people who worshipped Baal. The Greeks were there who worshipped Pan. Do you know the god Pan? Do you know who the god Pan is? Nobody knows the god Pan. The god of festivities and music, a god of the forest and fertility and sexuality, but also the God who imposed fear on people who didn't respect him. And there at Caesarea Philippi was the temple to Pan. It's still called to this very day Banias, after Pan. And guess what was there? According to people, the Greeks who worship Pan, the gateway to Hades. And if you don't line up with Pan, guess what? The gateway to Hades is waiting for you. Do you know where the word panic comes from? Literally. The etymology of the word panic comes from the fear that those who worshipped Pan endorsed. Caesarea Philippi was the springs of the Jordan River and had great spiritual significance for the Hebrew people. And of course, the great white marble temple to Caesar. Do you not think it's very interesting that it was in that very context that Jesus turned to his followers? He was about to be arrested and crucified. Time is running out. And turned to them and say, well, who do you, in this atmosphere of the world's religions and powers, who do you say that I am? And Peter says, you are the anointed one of God. You are the king. You are the king. You are the king of reality. As we read from Romans this morning, that from him and through him and to him are all things. You are the author and the source and the sustainer of all things. You are the king, the anointed one. Who is Jesus the Christ for you? In our passage, Jesus turns and he says to Peter, Peter, flesh and blood has not revealed this to you. To know who I actually am does not come by human reason and your seminary courses. Flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but what? My Spirit. So who Messiah actually is cannot be attained by human reason and effort alone. Unless the Spirit of love awakens your mind, you cannot know who Messiah actually is. And on this foundation of revelation, I will build my church. And guess what? What's it? On this revelation, on this rock, Peter, I will build my church. And what? What's the next line? The gates of hell. Why was he saying that there? What was there in the place that he was saying that? Hades, the gate to Hades. You can Google it, it's still there. All of these religions that people fear, that control them, guess what? They cannot prevail against the King of Kings, the ruler of the universe, in whom all things consist, who is unbreakable, unconditional love. All the fears of the world and of Hades itself cannot quench or suppress unbreakable love of God, which is standing before you today, Peter, in flesh and blood and time and space. Blessed are you. Because you see this, you are going to be a leader in my church of this good news. So number 2 in your outline, the question is, will you tell Messiah who Messiah is supposed to be? Hey, come on, God, if you're real, why don't you fix this? If you want me to trust you, God, do that for me. Because in this very same passage as we read, Jesus says, you know what? Just like I wasn't the Messiah you thought I would be for the Canaanite woman, guess what? I'm not the Messiah who's going to come in and kick down the temple of Rome and set up a military rule on earth. I'm going to actually give my life away in love. And what does Peter say? You can't do that. We staked our lives on you. And what does Jesus say to Peter? He calls him Satan. Why? Because you are not mindful of the things of God, the way God's love does things. Instead, you've aligned yourself with the reason of fallen, fearful humans. Because that's the spirit of, the word Satan means enemy. That's the spirit of the enemy of our souls that continuously wants to cloak us in fear. Isn't that amazing? Don't you see? Don't you see this paradox? It seems too extreme almost. In one breath, Jesus is saying, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah. Flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father in heaven, and on this rock I will build my church." And then a few breaths later, he's saying, "Get behind me, Satan." And we think, wow, how can that be? How can that be? Because it's the very same thing that goes on inside of us every single day. One minute, we're overwhelmed by love, and we want to change the world by love, and we recognize the love of God in Jesus, the Christ, the Messiah, and we surrender our allegiance to that hope, and then 5 minutes later, something triggers us and comes along, and immediately we're leaning on our own understanding and our human reason. I'm going to get that guy. Or we put our hope in politics, or money, or fame, or reputation. It's the very same thing that goes on inside our own hearts that we see in Peter. And so the question comes back to you, who do you say that I am? Who am I for you today? Because nothing else really in the end matters. You can polish the well as long as you want, but if you don't drink from the water, you'll never have life. And so in closing, we come back to the Canaanite woman, the sworn enemy of the Hebrew people, and we see the greatness of her faith. We see how that faith moved Jesus, the faith that recognized that the love of God has no boundaries or walls that can stop it. And she hoped and gave in to that love. And so from William Barclay, here then indeed is the dramatic picture. Here is a homeless, penniless Galilean carpenter with 12 very ordinary men. I don't know if you noticed the graphic that Julie found on the front. Here they are, Caesarea Philippi, out walking along in the fields. Just look at it for a second. They're having a conversation, and Jesus is saying, "Who do you say that I am?" He's saying that in the backdrop of Caesar's great white marble temple and all of these world religions. They say about 12 different religions were thriving in Caesarea Philippi at the time. And it's in that milieu, in that context, that Jesus, this nobody carpenter, doesn't have a collar on, doesn't have any stamp from any seminary. He doesn't have any man-made given credentials. He's a flippin' carpenter. Standing in all the glory of the world religions, asking this question, "Who do you say that I am?" At that moment, the Orthodox people of his day, of Jesus' day, the people with credentials and recognition were actually plotting to eliminate and destroy him as a dangerous heretic. He stands in an area littered with the temples of the Syrian gods, in a place where the ancient Greek gods looked down, in a place where the history of Israel crowded in upon the minds of people, where the white marble splendor of the home of Caesar worship dominated the landscape and compelled and wowed the eye. And there, of all places, this amazing, lowly carpenter stands and asks human beings who they believe him to be, and hopes for the answer, the Son of God, the real one, not Caesar. It is as if Jesus deliberately set himself against the background of the world's religions in all their history and their splendor, and demanded to be compared with them and to have the verdict given in his favor. There are few scenes where Jesus lives more conscious of his own divinity and where it shines out with such dazzling light. So the fact that a human being walked the earth as the fullness of the love of God and shone a light that no one has ever seen since and is the hope of the world, that is Messiah. That is Jesus the Christ. And the only question that matters is not me winning an argument of apologetics to convince you otherwise, historically or not. The question the Holy Spirit, who revealed to Peter who Messiah was, is asking you today is, who do you say that I am? And who am I for you today? Some congregations really reach out to the younger generation who doesn't do things the way we do at our well. We have an older demographic here, don't we? Do you know what that means? Most of our lives are over. That's the reality. There is an end, and it's coming. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I hate those scare tactics. I'm just, as Moses said, so teach us to number our days that we might gain a heart of wisdom on how we live and where we place our hope. Who is Messiah for you today? Last Sunday, we had a baptismal, and we went over to the Roberts pool, and if you haven't been to their backyard, you should sneak in there and go swimming. Very nice. I know where the fridge is. It was a beautiful day, a really beautiful day. And you know, when we are baptized and the church identifies us as one of them, that happens once. It never happens again. But this was a time when people wanted to proclaim their identity. And so we had 6 people. I think 4 of them are here today. And so Sharon, if you would like to come forward, and Julie, if you would come forward, and Matthew is not here, and Herb, if you would like to come forward. What was the service like? They came down into the pool with me, and I asked each one of them, what does it mean to be baptized? What did being baptized mean to Jesus? Why did he tell John that he needed to be baptized when he was 30 years old, already circumcised, gone through everything according to the Hebrew law? Why did he need to permit it for the sake of righteousness, for a proclamation? And so I asked each of these people, do you this day renounce the value systems and the ways of this world? And do you commit to following Messiah, the Christ, for the rest of your lives? And each one said, I do. And down, Teresa. Okay.
We knew you were here.
Nice try. I thought I did at the beginning. Sorry. So each one of them, I would ask that question, and I would ask it to you today. You don't, in your own heart, you can make this choice. Who is Messiah for you today? Are you willing to turn your back on the value systems, the measuring systems, and the things that the world chases after for meaning and security? Die to those things and be resurrected, come up to new life, to walk and follow Messiah in the way of unconditional, unbreakable love? And each one of these 4 people said, I do. It was a beautiful day. So, I have here for Teresa a certificate. For Herb, a certificate, a record. For Julie, a certificate. And for Sharon, a certificate. And inside is a copy of this original painting from a lady who watches our service used to be in Florida, now she moved to New Hampshire. She's an artist, Jill, and it's a verse I learned when I was 3 years old. Trust in the Lord with all your, and lean not on your own what? In all your ways, and he will direct your path. It's what it means to follow Messiah. Beautiful? How about a happy round of applause? One last thing is a little shell inside, which symbolizes, in places where there was shallow water, the dipping of using a shell to baptize by sprinkling. So that's yours to take with you. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Stand and join.